stinging, almost metallic smell hit Liam first, a sharp, unpleasantly acrid tang that instantly aggressively overpowered the usual mild, almost comforting chlorine scent of the Serenity Shores community therapy pool. It made his eyes water involuntarily, and the back of his throat burn with a raw chemical harshness, a visceral, instinctual alarm bell ringing in his senses the moment he stepped through the heavy sliding glass doors of the pool enclosure. His daughter Maya's small, trusting hand clasped firmly but gently in his. Maya, her bright pink mermaid-themed swim goggles already perched jauntily on her forehead, her favorite fluffy towel draped over her arm, skipped slightly ahead, eager for her weekly hydrotherapy session, a vital ritual that helped ease the persistent stiffness and pain in her young joints from the juvenile arthritis that had shadowed her childhood. The warm, perpetually humid air inside the spacious enclosure, usually a comforting, therapeutic embrace, felt suddenly heavy, almost cloying, palpably toxic in a way he couldn't immediately define, but which his professional instincts registered as profoundly wrong. "Daddy, it smells funny in here today," Maya said, her small brow furrowing in childish confusion as she reached the tiled edge of the shimmering turquoise water, her usual excited anticipation visibly dampened. "Like that yucky stuff you use to clean the drains, but stronger." Liam's heart lurched with a sudden sickening thud. The pool's surface, usually a pristine crystal-clear mirror reflecting the bright overhead lights, had an odd, disturbing oily sheen in several places, a disturbing, unnatural rainbow effect that shimmered and shifted with the water's gentle movement, and definitely shouldn't be there. And along the meticulously maintained tiled edges, he now saw a faint, almost imperceptible frothy white residue, like something dangerously corrosive had been spilled or poured and was actively reacting with the water, the grout, and the pool chemicals. He knelt down quickly, his movements urgent, pulling Maya gently but firmly back from the immediate edge. "Stay right here for a minute, sweetie. Don't go any closer. Let Daddy just take a quick look at something, okay?" As he moved closer to the water's edge, the offensive smell intensified dramatically, a harsh, biting chemical reek that spoke of something far beyond a simple, easily correctable imbalance in the pool's carefully monitored chlorine or pH levels. A knot of cold, hard dread tightened in his stomach, a familiar sensation from his work when faced with unseen public health threats. This wasn't right. This was very, very wrong. He dipped a cautious index finger into the water near the edge, just breaking the surface tension. It felt strangely, unnervingly slick, not just wet, in the way pool water should feel. He pulled his finger back quickly and saw a faint, almost invisible milky cloudiness briefly coating his fingertip, and then a tiny, sharp pinprick of burning sensation began to develop on the skin, growing rapidly in intensity. "Maya, honey," he said, his voice remarkably calm, despite the sudden, violent spike of adrenaline-fueled panic that was now coursing through him. "How about we don't go in the pool just yet? I think maybe the filters are acting up a bit. Let's go sit on one of those comfy benches for a minute." "Okay, we can read that new book you got." He steered her gently but firmly towards the brightly colored plastic chairs lined against the far wall of the enclosure, his mind racing a terrifying cascade of worst-case scenarios flooding his thoughts. What if someone had deliberately, maliciously contaminated the water? What if it was something highly toxic, something that could cause irreversible harm? For Maya, with her sometimes compromised immune system, due to her medication, even a minor infection or chemical exposure could have serious, far-reaching consequences. His protective instincts, always on high alert where his beloved daughter was concerned, went into immediate, full-blown overdrive. He pulled out his phone, his fingers already dialing the Serenity Shores community manager's number. His mind simultaneously formulating the urgent, precise questions he needed, answered the internal alarm bells in his head, now clanging with deafening insistence. He needed to know, and know immediately, when the pool had last been professionally checked, exactly what chemicals were routinely used and stored on site, and crucially who had authorized and unsupervised access to the pool area and its chemical storage facilities. This wasn't just a potential maintenance issue, a simple oversight. This felt deliberate, targeted, undeniably malicious. The vivid image of that unnatural oily sheen on the water, that acrid lung-searing smell, that distinct, undeniable burn on his finger. It sent a shiver of icy visceral fear down his spine, a fear amplified 100-fold by Maya's innocent proximity to the danger. Life in Serenity Shores. A sprawling, meticulously landscaped, gated community, nestled in the quieter, more affluent outskirts of the bustling city, had generally been peaceful and predictable, a welcome, much-needed respite from the often stressful, always demanding rigors of Liam's job as the director of the city's sprawling public health department. His days were an exhausting, complex tapestry of high-stakes policy meetings, endless budget negotiations, with city council intricate emergency preparedness drills for everything from pandemics to bioterrorism threats, and the constant, often frustrating uphill battle against the myriad public health challenges facing a diverse and sprawling metropolis. His evenings and cherished weekends, however, were sacrosanct, dedicated entirely to Sarah, his supportive, intelligent, and unfailingly pragmatic wife, and above all to Maya, the bright, resilient, undisputed center of their world. Maya's juvenile arthritis, diagnosed when she was just 4, presented daily challenges: pain, stiffness, fatigue, but her spirit remained remarkably bright and indomitable, her infectious bubbling giggle a constant, uplifting source of joy in their lives. The community therapy pool, a recent and much-lauded addition, had been nothing short of a godsend for them, a place where Maya could move freely, almost effortlessly and comfortably, the warm, buoyant water easing her chronic pain, improving her range of motion, and providing a crucial, enjoyable component of her ongoing intensive therapy. It was a sanctuary for her, a place of relief and happiness, and by extension, it was a sanctuary for Liam and Sarah as well. The Serenity Shores Homeowners Association, however, presided over with an almost dictatorial, unyielding fervor by a woman named Karen Hawthorne, had become an increasing, unavoidable source of low-level but persistent friction and simmering resentment for many residents. Karen, who seemed to view the thick binder of HOA bylaws as her personal, divinely inspired commandments, was notorious throughout the community for her zealous, often obsessive enforcement of frequently nitpicky and sometimes entirely nonsensical rules. Her tenure was marked by a constant, unwelcome stream of violation notices for everything from non-approved welcome mats and unseasonal decorative flags to the precise regulation positioning of garden gnomes and the exact shade of beige permitted for exterior window trim. She possessed an almost uncanny, unsettling ability to find fault with even the most innocuous of actions or possessions, and her interactions with residents, particularly those who dared to question her authority or interpretations, were often characterized by a condescending, patronizing tone and an unwavering, unshakable belief in her own superior judgment and infallible wisdom. The therapy pool, a relatively recent addition to the community's extensive list of amenities and one funded largely through a specific grant Sarah had helped secure, had been a particular, almost immediate target of Karen Hawthorne's vociferous disapproval from its very inception. She had repeatedly voiced grave concerns about its unsightly clinical appearance and its potential to attract unwanted attention and elements at numerous HOA meetings, her objections often laced with a barely concealed, thinly veiled disdain for the very purpose it served and the people who benefited from it. Sarah had recounted several deeply uncomfortable instances where Karen had made pointed, incredibly insensitive, and frankly offensive remarks about the pool, referring to it dismissively as a special needs facility that, in her opinion, didn't align with the community's intended upscale aesthetic and leisurely lifestyle. Her profound narrow-mindedness, her distinct lack of empathy, and her obsession with superficial appearances were well known and widely disliked, but no one, not even her staunchest critics, had ever anticipated a level of malice, a depth of bitterness that could potentially deliberately endanger the health and well-being of innocent children. Liam's increasingly urgent call to the community manager, a harried, perpetually overwhelmed young man named David Miller, yielded little immediate information beyond a vague, unsatisfactory promise to look into it as soon as possible. David, when pressed, seemed far more concerned with Liam's insistent tone and the potential for causing unnecessary alarm among the residents than with the actual serious possibility of a dangerously contaminated pool. Frustrated beyond measure by the palpable lack of urgency and understanding, Liam disconnected the call and immediately made another, this time to his highly capable deputy director at the Public Health Department, Dr. Emily Carter. Emily was sharp, incredibly efficient, and utterly unflappable in any crisis, a trusted colleague Liam had relied on for years. Emily, it's Liam. I need your help urgently. Liam said, his voice tight with a mixture of professional concern and paternal fear. There's something seriously wrong with the therapy pool at my community Serenity Shores. The smell is dangerously off. There's a weird, oily film on the water, and it caused a definite, albeit slight, burning sensation on my skin on contact. I strongly suspect some kind of deliberate chemical contamination. Emily's tone shifted instantly from friendly warmth to crisp, professional concern. Liam, are you there now? Are Maya and you safe? Can you secure the area? Prevent anyone else from entering the water until we can assess. Yes, Maya and I are here. I've kept her well away from the pool. There are a few other families starting to arrive for their scheduled sessions. I'm trying to warn them off without causing a panic. Good. Don't let anyone, and I mean anyone, near that water. I'm going to mobilize one of our rapid response hazmat teams and dispatch our lead environmental health specialist immediately. We'll get water samples collected and analyzed on a priority 1 basis. In the meantime, can you try to discreetly identify any potential sources of contamination? Has there been any recent unscheduled maintenance? Any reports of unusual activity or unauthorized access around the pool area lately? The HOA president here, a woman named Karen Hawthorne, has been openly, aggressively hostile towards this pool ever since it was proposed. Liam said, the disparate pieces starting to click rapidly and chillingly into place, a horrifying suspicion forming and solidifying in his mind. She's made numerous official complaints about its appearance. Its users even tried to have its operating hours severely restricted. I know it sounds far-fetched, Emily, maybe even paranoid, but frankly, I wouldn't put it past her to do something drastic, something unthinkable to get her way. Emily's voice was serious, devoid of any doubt. Liam, in situations like this, we have to consider all possibilities, no matter how unpleasant. I'm also going to notify the police department immediately. Deliberate contamination of a public or community pool, especially one used by vulnerable populations, is a very serious criminal offense. Stay safe, keep Maya safe, and keep me updated on everything. Within the hour, the usually tranquil Serenity Shores community pool area was a scene of controlled, almost surreal chaos. Hazmat-suited technicians, looking like astronauts on an alien planet, were carefully, methodically collecting multiple water samples from various points in the pool, their sophisticated instruments beeping and whirring softly in the suddenly silent enclosure. Environmental health specialists from Liam's department were meticulously documenting the scene, taking hundreds of photographs, making detailed notes, and interviewing the handful of bewildered and increasingly frightened residents who had arrived for their morning swim or therapy sessions, only to be met with a scene of flashing lights and men in protective gear. 2 marked police cruisers were parked discreetly but visibly outside the pool enclosure, their rooftop lights flashing a silent, ominous warning to anyone approaching. Liam, despite his official capacity as the city's top public health official, remained primarily a concerned father, keeping Maya close by his side, distracting her with games on his phone all the while, answering a barrage of questions from the investigators with a growing, sickening sense of dread and a cold, simmering anger. Karen Hawthorne, inevitably alerted by the escalating commotion and the sight of official vehicles converging on her domain, arrived at the pool area with a flourish, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her expression a carefully composed mixture of haughty annoyance and officious self-importance. What in heaven's name is going on here? She demanded, her voice sharp, loud, and accusatory, as she attempted to sweep past the police cordon and confront the officials directly. This is causing a terrible, unacceptable disturbance to our residents. I have important board meeting minutes to finalize, and this circus is hardly conducive to a productive atmosphere. Officer Miller, a young but commendably professional and unflustered police officer, politely but firmly directed her to stay behind the established yellow tape line. Ma'am, there has been a credible report of potential serious chemical contamination in the community pool. We are currently investigating the matter. For your safety, and to preserve the integrity of the scene, please remain back. Contamination. Karen scoffed, her eyes rolling dramatically as if dealing with a particularly foolish child. Honestly, some people in this community will complain about absolutely anything. It's probably just a touch too much chlorine. Our maintenance staff are perfectly competent, I assure you, though, perhaps a little overzealous at times. Liam, who had been speaking in hushed tones with one of the lead hazmat technicians, turned slowly, his gaze cold and penetrating, fixed unwaveringly on Karen Hawthorne. Mrs. Hawthorne. He said, his voice dangerously low calm, and controlled a tone that those who knew him well recognized as a sign of profound anger. The initial field tests are indicating the presence of a highly acidic corrosive substance in the pool water, something far more dangerous, far more insidious than a simple excess of chlorine. Karen's perfectly coiffed head snapped back as if she'd been physically struck. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Acid, that's absurd, utterly ridiculous. Is it, Mrs. Hawthorne? Liam's eyes narrowed, his professional demeanor now fully engaged. Has there been any unusual or unauthorized access to the pool chemical storage room lately? Have you or anyone else observed anyone acting suspiciously around the pool area in the last 24 to 48 hours? Karen's carefully cultivated composure wavered for a fraction of a second, a fleeting flicker of something unreadable, fear-guilt, in her usually hard eyes before she quickly regained her imperious dismissive mask. Of course not. I would certainly know about any such activity. I take the security and pristine upkeep of our valuable community amenities extremely seriously. It's practically my full-time job. Her tone was overly defensive, almost too emphatic, her denial just a little too quick, a little too loud. The preliminary lab results, fast-tracked due to the potential public health emergency, came back with terrifying speed, confirming Liam's worst, most dreadful fears. The primary contaminant was positively identified as concentrated hydrochloric acid, a dangerously corrosive substance that could cause severe chemical burns to the skin and eyes and significant respiratory damage upon inhalation of its fumes. The concentration levels detected in multiple samples from the pool water were alarmingly, shockingly high, posing a significant and immediate health risk, especially to vulnerable individuals like young children, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems like Maya. The police investigation, already serious, intensified dramatically with Detective Reynolds, a seasoned, meticulous investigator known for his thoroughness and tenacity, taking personal command of the case. Security footage from the main community center building, which had a camera angle that partially overlooked the pool enclosure, was meticulously reviewed, frame by frame, hour by hour. While the footage from the previous night was somewhat grainy and partially obscured by deep shadows and overgrown landscaping. Landscaping, Karen had insisted, remained untouched for aesthetic reasons. It did clearly show a figure closely matching Karen Hawthorne's build, distinctive hairstyle, and characteristic gait, entering the locked pool area late in the evening, using a key and carrying a large, opaque plastic container. The figure remained inside the pool enclosure for approximately 20 minutes before emerging and hurrying away, the container appearing noticeably lighter than when the figure had entered. Detective Reynolds interviewed Karen Hawthorne at length later that day at the police station. Initially, she was predictably indignant, full of bluster, and vehemently denied any involvement, reiterating her long-standing concerns about the therapy pool's unfortunate aesthetics and its perceived negative impact on the community's carefully curated image and, consequently, its property values. However, when confronted directly with the damning security footage and the irrefutable lab results confirming the presence of hydrochloric acid, her carefully constructed facade of outraged innocence began to visibly crack under the pressure. She offered a series of increasingly implausible, contradictory explanations for her presence at the pool late at night, suggesting the container held specialized pool cleaning supplies she was personally testing, or perhaps a unique fertilizer blend for the surrounding problematic landscaping, but she couldn't provide any concrete details, brand names, or receipts, nor could she offer any remotely credible explanation for the undeniable presence of a significant quantity of concentrated hydrochloric acid in the pool. Meanwhile, Liam, acting with the full legal authority of his office as Director of Public Health, issued an immediate citywide public health advisory and a mandatory quarantine order for the Serenity Shores community pool. He also urged any residents who had used the pool within the previous 72 hours to seek immediate medical attention if they experienced any unusual symptoms, such as skin irritation, eye discomfort, or respiratory issues. The news spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community, fueling a potent wave of fear, anger, and disbelief. Residents already weary and resentful of Karen Hawthorne's overzealous, often arbitrary rule enforcement, and her condescending attitude were now facing the terrifying, almost unthinkable possibility that her obsessive actions had deliberately maliciously put their children, their families, their very health at grave risk. The story quickly gained significant traction in the local media. The stark, unsettling image of the usually inviting, sparkling blue therapy pool, now cordoned off with yellow hazard tape, juxtaposed with the chilling details of the acid contamination, creating a powerful, disturbing, and widely shared narrative of betrayal and endangerment within an idyllic suburban setting. The critical midpoint twist in the rapidly escalating investigation came in the form of an unexpected anonymous tip received by Detective Reynolds' dedicated hotline. The tipster, who identified themselves only as a deeply concerned and frightened Serenity Shores resident, claimed to have witnessed Karen Hawthorne purchasing a suspiciously large quantity of concentrated hydrochloric acid from a local somewhat obscure industrial supply store a few days prior to the pool incident. The tip, delivered via a disguised voice message, included the specific date, the approximate time of the purchase, and even a detailed description of Karen's vehicle, including its license plate number. Detective Reynolds, intrigued and sensing a major breakthrough, followed up on this crucial lead immediately and with discretion. The store owner, a grizzled, no-nonsense man, readily confirmed the purchase when shown a photograph of Karen. He vividly recalled Karen's unusual and rather aggressive request for such a strong industrial concentration of the acid, and her vague, dismissive explanation that it was for cleaning some extremely stubborn, unsightly stains on her patio and driveway. He even remembered her expressing visible annoyance and impatience that she had to sign a hazardous materials log for it and provide official identification, a store policy for such corrosive chemicals, a log which the store thankfully still had meticulously filed and which clearly bore Karen Hawthorne's signature and driver's license number. This direct, irrefutable evidence of Karen's personal purchase of the exact dangerous contaminant found in the pool effectively shattered her increasingly flimsy denials and painted a clear, undeniable picture of calculated premeditation and malicious intent. The stubborn, unsightly stains Karen had referred to now took on a horrifying, deeply sinister new meaning in Liam's mind. The perceived stain of a therapy pool of disabled children finding joy and relief in a community amenity on her idealized, chillingly sterile vision of Serenity Shores. It was no longer just about petty aesthetics or misguided power struggles. It was about a shocking, almost sociopathic level of malice and a blatant, terrifying disregard for human safety and well-being. The motive, as it began to emerge with chilling clarity, was apparently rooted in Karen's deep-seated obsessive belief that the therapy pool was an unacceptable eyesore, a blight on her perfectly ordered community, and that the children who used it, children like his precious Maya, somehow diminished the community's overall appeal, its exclusivity, and ultimately its property values. The rising action continued unabated with the discovery of even more corroborating evidence of Karen's erratic, vindictive, and controlling behavior. Several more residents, now feeling safer to speak out, came forward to Detective Reynolds' team with their own troubling stories of her petty harassment, her abuse of HOA power, and her often bizarre fixations. These tales, individually perhaps dismissed as minor annoyances, collectively painted a disturbing psychological portrait of a woman obsessed with absolute control, deeply resentful of any perceived challenge to her authority, and vindictively hostile towards anything or anyone that deviated from her narrow, rigid, and often prejudiced definition of acceptable community standards. One elderly, recently widowed resident recounted with tears in her eyes how Karen had callously threatened to impose daily fines on her for having a small, discreet bird feeder in her own backyard, claiming it attracted unwanted wildlife and vermin, and violated some obscure, unwritten landscaping rule. Another young parent described with simmering anger how Karen had repeatedly aggressively complained about the excessive and disruptive noise of young children playing and laughing in the community playground, even during officially designated daytime hours, going so far as to film them from her window and send threatening letters. These seemingly minor isolated incidents, when viewed in the broader, more sinister context of the pool contamination, revealed a deeply disturbing pattern of a woman who saw herself as the ultimate infallible arbiter of what was acceptable within Serenity Shores, and who was demonstrably willing to go to extreme dangerous lengths to enforce her warped, intolerant vision upon everyone else. The Serenity Shores HOA board, already under immense pressure from the furious community, and now facing the terrifying prospect of significant legal and financial repercussions themselves for negligence and enabling Karen's actions, finally belatedly voted in a chaotic emergency session to suspend Karen Hawthorne indefinitely from her position as president, pending the final outcome of the ongoing police investigation and any subsequent legal proceedings. However, this belated action did little to quell the pervasive anger and gnawing fear among the traumatized residents who now demanded far more sweeping accountability and genuine systemic transparency from the entire HOA leadership structure. Many residents began actively calling for a complete overhaul of the HOA's outdated and often ambiguous bylaws, a forensic audit of its finances, and an immediate recall election to remove the remaining board members whom they felt had at best passively enabled Karen's escalating reign of terror through their culpable inaction, and at worst had been actively complicit. The sense of betrayal and the profound erosion of trust within the once peaceful community were palpable, almost a physical weight in the air. The Serenity Shores that residents had once viewed as a tranquil, secure haven now felt fractured, poisoned, and fundamentally unsafe. The dramatic, cathartic climax of the unfolding drama took place not in a courtroom, but at an emergency community meeting held a few days later in the large, normally placid Serenity Shores clubhouse, a spacious room that had, ironically, often been the site of Karen Hawthorne's most imperious and condescending pronouncements to the residents. The meeting was packed to capacity standing room, only the air thick with palpable tension, barely suppressed anger, and a desperate collective need for answers, for reassurance, for justice. Residents, many clutching worriedly at their children's hands, filled every available chair, stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, and even spilled out into the hallway, their faces a grim mosaic of anger, fear, and a desperate yearning hope for some kind of resolution. Liam and Sarah sat near the front, their presence a silent but incredibly powerful reminder of the human cost, the potential tragedy of Karen's alleged actions. The remaining visibly shaken HOA board members sat nervously, almost cowering at the head table, looking pale, ill-equipped, and deeply uncomfortable under the intense accusatory scrutiny of their neighbors. Karen Hawthorne, now out on a substantial bail, but facing a raft of serious criminal charges, was conspicuously and perhaps wisely absent, her lawyer having strongly advised her to avoid any further public appearances or statements. The interim HOA president, a mild-mannered, clearly overwhelmed retiree named Mr. Davies, struggled visibly to maintain even a semblance of order as resident after resident rose to voice their profound anger, their deep-seated fears, and their demands for sweeping immediate accountability. Then Liam was invited by Mr. Davies to speak. He approached the microphone, his expression serious, composed, but undeniably resolute. He spoke not in his official capacity as the city's public health director, but simply as a father, a husband, a member of their wounded community, a neighbor whose child had been deliberately put in harm's way. What happened to our community therapy pool just a few days ago was not an accident. Liam stated, his voice clear, steady, and resonant, cutting through the emotional turmoil that filled the room. The evidence gathered by law enforcement and our own public health investigators strongly, unequivocally, suggests a deliberate, malicious act of chemical contamination, an act that could have had devastating, life-altering consequences for our children, for any of us who might have used that pool unaware of the danger. He then, with calm precision, outlined the timeline of events, the definitive lab results confirming the presence of highly concentrated hydrochloric acid, the damning security footage, and the irrefutable evidence of Karen Hawthorne's personal purchase of the specific chemical agent used in the attack. But this is not just about one horrifying, isolated incident. Liam continued his gaze, sweeping slowly, deliberately across the packed room, meeting the eyes of his distraught neighbors, sharing their pain and their anger. This is about a well-documented, escalating pattern of abusive behavior, a callous disregard for the health and well-being of our entire community, and a dangerous, unacceptable abuse of power that was allowed to fester for far too long. He then recounted with quiet dignity some of the other disturbing stories that had emerged in recent days. The elderly resident's lost memorial tree, a sacred memory callously destroyed. The young parents silenced and intimidated for the simple, joyful sound of their children's laughter in their own backyard. The constant wearying, petty harassment and intimidation that had become a hallmark of life under Karen Hawthorne's rule. This was a community held hostage for years by one individual's warped, intolerant vision and her arrogant, unshakable belief that she could impose her will on all of us with no thought for the consequences, no shred of empathy, no regard for basic human decency. Suddenly, a woman stood up abruptly in the back of the crowded room, her voice trembling with a raw, potent emotion that silenced everyone. "My son, Michael," she cried out, tears streaming down her face. "He uses that pool every single week. It's the only place he gets relief from his cerebral palsy. When I heard what happened, when I understood what she did, I was utterly terrified. What if he had gone in that water? What if I hadn't smelled it?" Her voice broke with a sob. "She didn't just damage some property. She poisoned the one place my son can feel free from his constant pain, the one place he can almost be like other kids." Her raw maternal anguish resonated deeply with everyone present, a collective gasp of shared horror and empathy rippling through the stunned room. Just then, Detective Reynolds, who was present at the meeting at the request of the interim board, stood up from his seat near the front. "I can confirm," he stated, his voice firm and authoritative, "that the Serenity Shores Police Department, in conjunction with the City Prosecutor's Office, has gathered significant and compelling evidence indicating that this contamination was a deliberate, premeditated criminal act. We have filed multiple felony charges against Ms. Karen Hawthorne, and I can assure you that our investigation is ongoing and active. We strongly encourage anyone with any further information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to please come forward and speak with us." The interim HOA president, Mr. Davies, his face pale, but his voice gaining a semblance of resolve, then announced that the board, in an emergency session earlier that day, had voted unanimously to initiate formal legal proceedings to permanently remove Karen Hawthorne from any association with the Serenity Shores HOA, and to immediately begin the complex, overdue process of a complete and transparent overhaul of all HOA bylaws with full community input and participation guaranteed at every single step. The room erupted in a spontaneous, thunderous wave of applause, a collective sigh of profound relief, and a surge of renewed, if fragile, hope, washing over the weary but now united residents of Serenity Shores. The falling action in the wake of that pivotal community meeting began with surprising swiftness. Karen Hawthorne's ensuing legal battles were protracted, messy, and ultimately ruinously costly for her. The sheer weight of the evidence against her, particularly Mr. Abernathy's meticulously kept financial records detailing her embezzlement, and the irrefutable proof of her personal purchase of the industrial-grade hydrochloric acid, proved entirely insurmountable for her high-priced legal team. She was eventually convicted on multiple felony counts, including aggravated assault, felony endangerment of a child, and the illegal purchase, transportation, and disposal of hazardous materials. The judge, in a strongly worded, widely publicized sentencing, emphasized the egregious, calculating nature of her crimes, her profound betrayal of community trust, and her shocking lack of remorse throughout the proceedings. Karen Hawthorne received a significant multi-year prison sentence, a just and fitting end to her reign of terror. The Serenity Shores HOA, under the diligent, careful guidance of the newly energized interim board and with extensive, enthusiastic community involvement at every stage, underwent a complete and fundamental transformation. New equitable bylaws were painstakingly drafted, debated, and adopted, emphasizing transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility, and above all, mutual respect for all residents. Clear term limits were imposed on all future board members, and a fair, impartial, and easily accessible process for addressing resident grievances and resolving disputes was established. The community, galvanized by the shared crisis, rallied together in an unprecedented display of unity. They organized volunteer efforts to professionally deep clean and lovingly restore the therapy pool area, planting new cheerful flowers and ensuring it was once again a safe, welcoming, and joyful space for everyone, especially the children who relied on it so heavily for their physical and emotional well-being. Liam, while deeply and personally affected by the entire ordeal, found a renewed sense of passion and purpose in his vital work, advocating even more fiercely and effectively for stringent public health and safety regulations across the city. The Serenity Shores incident became a sobering, frequently cited case study within his department and among public health professionals, statewide, starkly highlighting the potential dangers of unchecked local authority, the critical importance of robust whistleblower protections, and the enduring power of community vigilance in safeguarding public spaces. He also worked closely with local and national disability advocacy groups to raise broader awareness about the profound importance of universally accessible community amenities and the urgent ongoing need to protect vulnerable populations from discrimination, neglect, and outright harm. Maya, though initially frightened and confused by the events surrounding her beloved pool, showed remarkable, inspiring resilience. She was absolutely overjoyed when the pool finally reopened after weeks of meticulous cleaning and safety checks, the water sparkling invitingly, and most importantly, certifiably safe once again. The entire community seemed to rally around her and the other children who used the therapy pool, organizing a small, joyful reopening celebration and demonstrating their unwavering support and affection in countless, small but meaningful ways. The corrosive fear and bitter division that Karen Hawthorne had so maliciously sowed within Serenity Shores began to slowly, steadily dissipate, replaced by a much stronger, more authentic sense of unity and a shared, deeply felt commitment to creating and maintaining a truly inclusive, supportive, and caring community for all. On a bright, sun-drenched Saturday afternoon, some months later, Liam stood by the poolside, a soft towel draped over his arm, watching Maya laughing with unrestrained delight as she splashed and played in the pristine therapy pool, her movements visibly more fluid and joyful than they had been in weeks. He felt a profound, almost overwhelming sense of relief, peace, and quiet gratitude wash over him. The acrid, terrifying smell of fear and chemicals had long since been replaced by the familiar, comforting, almost sweet scent of properly balanced chlorine, now a welcome symbol of safety, healing, and normalcy restored. Serenity Shores had been severely tested, pushed to the brink by malice and betrayal, but it had ultimately emerged stronger, wiser, and more united, a powerful testament to the quiet resilience of its ordinary residents and the enduring transformative power of community spirit in the face of unexpected darkness. The bitter, lingering taste of Karen Hawthorne's hateful actions would not soon be forgotten, but the sweet, empowering taste of their collective recovery, their shared triumph over adversity, was far more potent, a lasting reminder that even in the face of calculated, deliberate malice, compassion, courage, and unwavering unity could and indeed must always prevail.